At the peak of his success, Dan Blocker had everything most actors spend a lifetime chasing: stability, respect, music, and a role that made him feel permanent. That's what made the ending so jarring. There was no build-up that felt dangerous, no moment that screamed tragedy ahead, just a sense that things would soon return to normal. They never music did. What followed was sudden, devastating, and left behind a silence that grew louder with time. Dolphia Blocker could have become the public face of grief. Instead, she chose something far rarer: disappearance. Music, her refusal to participate in the narrative, turned their final chapter into one of music Hollywood's quietest tragedies. A giant raised in hard times. Little Joe might win people over with his charm, humor, and good looks, but it was Hoss who truly captured hearts. The big, shy, slightly gullible, but endlessly lovable Cartwright brother had something special. There was a softness to him, a humility and innocence mixed with that puppy-dog charm that made him impossible not to love, and that same spirit came straight from the man who played him. Dan Blocker entered the world already larger than life. Born on December 10, 1928, music in Dalb, Texas, he weighed an unbelievable 14 pounds. To this day, he still holds the record as the largest baby ever born in Bowie County. In a way, his life started as a story people couldn't help but tell, and that thing never really went away. When he was still young, his parents, Ora Shack Blocker and Mary Arizona Blocker, moved the family to the small town of O'Donnell, about 40 miles south of Leach. Shack had been a farmer, but after losing everything during the Great Depression, he scraped together enough money to open a grocery store. The family lived in rooms behind the shop, and Dan helped out however he could, often carrying groceries to customers' cars. Shack used to joke with friends that he should pay them to hire Dan because the boy was so big, he kept breaking things in the store. What no one realized back then was that his size would one day become his greatest advantage. O'Donnell was tiny, with a population of around 800 people surrounded by wide-open ranch land. Saturday nights were the big event, and oddly enough the entertainment often involved Dan himself. Word spread that if anyone wanted to test their strength, Dan would be waiting. They'd rope off part of Main Street, and he'd take on anyone brave enough to step up. According to Blocker, he never lost a fight. Even as a teenager, he weighed about 275 pounds, give or take, and he knew exactly what he was capable of. He was so confident in his strength that he once claimed he could beat heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson if he just had a few months to train and lose some extra weight. That confidence wasn't just talk. At 13, he joined the Texas Military Institute and played linebacker on the football team. He was so good that he earned a scholarship to Soul Music Ross State University, where he planned to study English and keep playing football. By the time he was 18, he stood 6 feet 3 inches and weighed nearly 300 pounds, and he would grow even bigger as the years went on, but it was a twist of fate that changed everything. The school's drama club needed someone strong enough to move heavy dummy props for a production of Arsenic and Old Lace. Dan fit the job perfectly. Then someone suggested he step into a small role as Teddy Brewster, the eccentric nephew of the play's murderous aunts. That single moment on stage changed his life. The audience reaction, the energy, the feeling of being seen, it grabbed him completely. He switched his major from English to theater and never looked back. After graduating music, he turned down offers to play professional football and headed east to chase a dream he hadn't even known he had. He worked summer stock and repertory theater, music slowly building his craft, until he landed a small role on Broadway in King Lear. It was the start of something bigger, though the path would take a detour he never planned for. In late 1950, Dan Blocker was drafted into the U.S. Army during the Korean War. Music, he went through basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, followed by 9 months of training in Sapporo, Japan. From there, he was sent to Korea, serving with Company FN Battalion, 179th Infantry Regiment of the 45th Infantry Division. By the time his service ended, he had risen to the rank of sergeant. His unit was stationed near the Jamestown line close to Chang, an area that is now part of North Korea. In March they were pulled into intense fighting at a place called Outpost Erie. Then on May 25th, their patrol walked straight into a music communist ambush deep behind enemy lines. Outnumbered and pinned down, the Americans chose to fight. When one soldier was wounded and trapped under heavy fire, Blocker held his position for more than 4 hours, music returning fire against machine guns, mortars, and small arms. His actions music kept the enemy at bay, even though the wounded soldier did not survive. The fighting didn't stop there. From mid-June through the end of the month, his unit battled at Erie Old Baldy and Porkchop Hill before defending Hill 223. After 209 straight days on the front lines, the division was finally pulled back in July. Blocker, who had been acting as first sergeant, ended up hospitalized for wounds he suffered during combat. He was credited with saving the lives of others in his unit and was sent home in August 1952. One of the men who served under him, Gordon Music Apps, later spoke about Sergeant Blocker with deep respect. He described him as strong, athletic, loud in the best way, friendly with everyone, and a natural leader. Apt said Blocker could crush a beer can between 2 fingers and still make time to look out for every man under his command. That same year, Dan married Dolia Parker. With a new wife and a sense of responsibility, he returned to college and earned a master's degree in dramatic arts. Soon after, with a growing family to support, twin daughters Deborah Lee and Dana Lynn, and sons David and Dirk, he took a job teaching high school English and drama in Sonora, Texas. Later, he taught 6th grade in New Mexico. Each move pushed him a little farther west, music step by step, quietly guiding him toward the life he was always meant to music live. Hollywood's biggest misunderstood star, Dan Blocker settled into married life with the same steadiness he brought to everything else. He loved being a teacher, loved being around kids, and genuinely enjoyed sharing his passion for acting and language with them. It's easy to imagine that he changed some lives along the way without ever knowing it. People who knew him all seemed to agree on one thing: Dan had a big heart. He could be quick-tempered at times, but he was just as quick to apologize and music admit when he was wrong. When he moved his family to California, it wasn't about chasing fame or soaking up attention. The plan was simple and practical. Dan enrolled at UCLA to work toward a PhD in dramatic arts, and he continued teaching while he studied. Acting was still something he loved, but it wasn't yet the center of his life. That began to change in the mid-1950s when he started auditioning for television roles to help bring in extra money. Westerns were everywhere at the time. Music and his size and presence made him a natural fit. He landed small roles one after another, slowly building experience in front of the camera. Around this time, Stanley Kubrick even tried to cast him in Doctor Strangelove after Peter Sears backed out of playing Major T.J. King Kong, but Blocker's agent turned down the script, and the role eventually went to Slim Pickens. It was one of those missed chances that only make sense in hindsight. In 1957, Blocker appeared in a Three Stooges short called Outer Space Jitters, playing a character known as the Goon, credited under the name Don Blocker. That same year, he showed up as a bartender in an episode of Sheriff of Cochise. Something clicked. Being back on set, slipping into different characters reminded him of just how much he loved acting. From there, the work started coming steadily. He appeared in popular shows like Gunsmoke, The Rifleman, Have Gun Will Travel, and Maverick, where he even got to show off his natural comedic timing. In 1958, he made an appearance on Walt Disney's Zorro and landed a regular role on a short-lived series called Cimarron City. The show didn't last long, and at the time it probably felt like another setback. But in reality, it was the break he didn't know he needed. Its cancellation left him free to take on the role that would define his life. When producer David Dort chose him to play Hoss Cartwright on Bonanza, everything changed. Dan put his doctoral studies on hold and became a full-time actor, mostly because the role demanded everything he had, and it was worth it. If Little Joe was the heartthrob of the show, Hoss was its heartbeat, the emotional center, the steady soul that held the music Cartwright family together. What's surprising is that Bonanza wasn't an instant hit. When it first aired, Ratings were so low that NBC seriously considered canceling it after just one season. Part of the problem was its Saturday night time slot, where it had to compete with Perry Mason. During its first year, the show didn't even crack the music top 30, but the network believed in it. They moved Bonanza to Sunday nights at 9 p.m., and that's when everything finally clicked. The audience grew, the ratings soared, and the show began the long run that would eventually stretch for 13 more seasons. Chevrolet came on as a sponsor, which gave the ratings another big push in season 2. Even so, the show nearly disappeared before it ever had a chance to succeed, mostly because it was expensive to produce. NBC executive Thomas Sarnoff later revealed that the network in New York had planned to cancel the show after the first 13 episodes because it had gone over budget. Filming Bonanza in color cost about $15,000 per episode in that first year, a huge amount at the time. Sarnoff stepped in and promised he could keep the production on budget, and he did. With that, Bonanza survived and then exploded, becoming one of the most beloved shows in television history, with Dan Blocker's host right at the center of it all. From the moment America met host Cartwright on Bonanza, something clicked. Here was this towering man, 6'4" inches, over 300 pounds, who looked like he had walked straight out of a legend. Yet instead of being a fearsome brute, Haas was gentle, awkward, funny, and endlessly kind. He tripped over his words. He stumbled into trouble. He wore his heart on his sleeve, and viewers instantly fell in love. The nickname Haas itself was a playful twist on the word horse, a folksy way of saying big as a horse. It fit perfectly. But what truly sealed the deal was how completely Dan Blocker disappeared into the role. To millions of fans, Haas Cartwright did not feel like a character. He felt like a real person. And that is where the great contradiction begins. Because in real life, Dan Blocker was nothing like the slow, simple-minded ranch hand he portrayed. He was highly educated, holding a master's degree in theater. Before his acting career took off, he had worked as a school teacher. He was thoughtful, well-read, deeply religious as a Free Methodist, and politically progressive. He supported liberal causes, and even backed Eugene McCarthy. The man behind the scenes